Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Viper versus DeMusliM. This is going to be game number one in this best of five in between these two juggernauts, both of them the champion of a previous S tier Age of Empires 4 event. This is the $100,000 N4C LAN at Berlin. As you see on the left side of your screen, there is Viper and there is DeMusliM in a Team Liquid jersey sitting there. It was just announced today that DeMusliM was picked up by Team Liquid. Huge news for Age of Empires 4, and he was picked up for Age of Empires 4. A legendary player now added to a legendary esports organization. I'm casting off-site, which means that I'm receiving a clear feed from the Berlin headquarters of the production team. I am getting the same image as you do. I'm not able to spectate myself. So I'm just getting the image that you can see on the screen with an observer in Berlin controlling the camera, and I'm adding my commentary as well over here. So spawning in on the left side is going to be DeMusliM playing as the Red English, and on the right side you will have Viper playing as the Abbasids in blue, and I do see Altai being played here in game number one. Now I will have to reread the rulebook here because I thought that Arabia is going to be your game number one all the time. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. We have seen some Arabia home map picks, and now we're seeing an Altai starting game, so I'm a little puzzled what exactly was going on over here. Because in most cases, you see Arabia being used as the number one game in every single set. So I'm actually somewhat surprised that the tournament deviated from this one, so I'll have to look into the rulebook over here, because I just took that for standard. That's the standard tournament setup for a long time. This being said, we are going to have, as I said, an Abbasid versus English matchup over here. English, a very popular civilization selection on Altai, but something that could really have issues with the fact that you only have 2 forests per player. If you look at the minimap, there's basically no additional wood aside from the starting forests of the players, and the English have a very wood-heavy unit composition. The longbows, potentially horsemen being added, something that the English like to play around with if the opponent is reacting with, for example, mass archers as well. So we have seen some English horsemen in mid-late game before, wouldn't be unprecedented, but most importantly, the longbowmen and the spearmen, these are wood-heavy units, which means that a lack of wood could be a concern. Of course, the good thing about the English late-game economy is going to be that you have the farmers gathering gold as well for you from the farms in Imperial Age, so that's going to be a nice advantage to play around with. Meanwhile, for the Abbasids, this is one of those, to a certain extent, wildcard civilizations, because they can do a lot of things. They can play 2 town center boom on this map, they can play a super aggressive game, they can play 2 town centers into a lot of aggression at the beginning of Castle Age. So whenever you're up against the Abbasids, you always have to be cautious, because aggression could appear any moment in a game. Because the ability to make siege weapons immediately, not even needing to research the technology for it, is immensely powerful for the Abbasids. Now, it looks like Viper is very successful gathering the sheep. Look at that herd following that scout out there. And I do believe that he also has some sheep back at home. He's not going to utilize them for the time being because he's working with the berries. The only thing that he needs to be careful about is not to lose that scout, because losing that scout would mean that he donates what seems to be 10 plus sheep to the opponent. Economy win coming in right now for the Viper, and for the Muslim, you would expect to see the longbows. Now, here's the deal. The English is a somewhat predictable civilization for this map. Chinese is probably the other civilization that you see in some cases. So in many ways, English can be counter-picked because it is a somewhat predictable civilization pick. And Viper is known for having very smart strategies and very well thought-over game plans for entire sets. So I'm fairly certain that Viper has thought about the possibility of the opponent picking English here. And we're seeing the Abbasids as a response to that. He hasn't started mining stone just yet, and that is an archer range that he's dropping right at the beginning. Could still be for camel archers in the future, because as we go deeper and deeper into March, starting like mid-February, once the Abbasids got buffed, you could see an emergence of the Camel Archer plus Horseman build, and that is gaining more and more popularity. Oh, looks like we have double Vipers. For a brief moment, the camera's freaked out, but don't worry, we got the Muslim back, now with that fancy Team Liquid tag in his name. The first player picked up, the only player picked up by Team Liquid right now in Age of Empires 4. Looks like it's going to be 2 archer ranges to play around with, and the unit that is training quite fast. You can see the progress bar, so it's probably just a standard archer, no camel archers. He's not going to play camel archers horsemen, instead he's just going mass archers. Now this raises a couple of questions. What exactly is his game plan over here? Because standard foot archers are nice and everything, but it's not spectacular for the Abbasids to play one town center into just standard food archers. Now, he might want to force his opponent to just go for some horsemen to try and battle a large number of archers. That could be a possibility, but I think that DeMusliM doesn't need to do that. He just needs to send in longbows, and that's exactly what we're seeing over here. He's trying to deny that tower. The tower will go up, and that's going to protect the berries to a certain extent. But given the fact that DeMusliM was able to secure some map control for himself, this is the time where you pull a villager and start making a tower, and you see that the lumber camp of Viper is now under attack. Viper could be in trouble here. He's got the archers out, and as I said, his numbers are looking pretty decent. Longbows take quite a lot of time to reach the battlefield over here, so Viper is going to have the numbers advantage in these battles. DeMusliM, however, has picked up Wheelbarrow already, and he's the one pushing with the longbows. You get the feel that DeMusliM is in a commanding position at this very moment. Of course, it's still very early in the game, it's only 6 minutes in, but DeMusliM is able to force Viper away from that wood line, forcing him to readjust to the other forest. This will be scouted by him immediately. DeMusliM will have a window to potentially drop a forward tower, and it looks like one longbowman will be mismicroed over here by a newly picked up Team Liquid player. No tower just yet for DeMusliM. So far, he's playing with some aggression, but behind this one, he's using the hunts. Not a single farm added so far by the English player. Ultimately, once the farming eco kicks in for the English, that's where things could get a little nasty for the Abbasids. For now, the Abbasid player does have access to the berries to a certain extent, so the food eco is going to be fine. One thing that's concerning for Viper, though, is that his backup berries are all the way up north, which means that it's going to be difficult, if not borderline impossible, to potentially control the backup gold, or not backup gold mine, but backup berries. So if he gets pushed at the front and he loses control over the berries, he will be cut off entirely from the berries, which means that he's going to have to take hunt or sheep. It's not the end of the world, and remember, Viper has a lot of sheep to work with, so he's got a fallback option. But the concern here is that he's not going to be taking his best food source, that being the berries. Now, it looks like Viper was playing this one patiently, and now he's launching a counterattack. He's probably aware of those longbows assembling in front of his base, and he wants to launch a counterattack. This could be risky, because the moment DeMusliM sees those archers pushing his base, he's going to jump on those lumberjacks. On the other hand, Viper could potentially catch DeMusliM off guard. Looks like DeMusliM instead will just dive in underneath the tower. He's realizing that no one is there to garrison it, and now he's going to try to leverage that long range of the longbows. He's going to lose his scouts in the process, but now he will try to micro away from those archers. Viper is splitting his archers up in line formation to try and spread them out and open up some more arrows towards those longbows, but the longbows are being microed very nicely over here by DeMusliM, and Viper is getting pushed back over here. You gotta wonder if he's adding a stable behind this one for some horsemen, and just like DeMusliM, Viper is going to lose his own scout as well in this engagement. I don't see a stable being added by Viper right now, and you see Siege Engineering on the far right side of the screen, below that longbowman indicator marked with a free. You can see a Siege Engineering upgrade come in. So that's an upgrade that's right now being done by DeMusliM. He still doesn't have a forward tower, and if he wants to go for such a level of aggression, he needs to have forward towers out here. At least one, so that he gets the network of castles bonus. But once he's got Siege Engineering, he's gonna be in a great position. Now, as you see, DeMusliM has run out of sheep to work with, and since he doesn't have a barracks to add spears, the newly built stable of Viper could cause problems. Because you're seeing horsemen hit the battlefield for Viper. Looks like villagers will garrison the tower over here. One will be taken down by the longbows. Bit of a value there for DeMusliM. Now he's got a 2 villagers lead over Viper. Still, DeMusliM wasn't able to inflict a tremendous amount of damage on Viper's eco. He forced him off from the wood line, killed 1 or 2 villagers, but that's basically it. The name of the game for Viper is patience, as the longbows are trying to open up a volley against those berry villagers. Viper's reactions were swift. He jumps back into the tower, so no villager gets picked off, and he's going to repeat the same thing over here. You see, longbows come in, villagers jump into the tower. Did a villager die? Because it seemed like a villager just died upon entering the tower. You could see 3 villagers out there, but when you saw the number at the top of the tower, you only had 2. So I wonder if one villager got damaged to 0 HP and it died inside the tower. That's a thing in Age of Empires 4. Anyways, you're going to have a tower now coming up here for DeMusliM. He's going to be able to finish the tower up here, giving him network of castles bonus. But he still is yet to see those horsemen arriving. He lost his scouts, so he's got no idea about that, and that's getting worrisome. Viper is massing up resources as well for Castle Age, potentially. So soon, DeMusliM is going to have to make his move. It's full longbows. I think he could really benefit from preemptively adding spears. One of the biggest mistakes, and this is something that many pros say, one of the biggest mistakes of players playing English is fully committing to longbows or just being too stubborn going for mass longbowmen, which is a great unit, especially with the Network of Castles bonus, but you gotta be careful because there are counter units to longbows. Here comes the battering ram pushing the berries right now. I do believe that the reinforcements were intercepted, so now DeMusliM is aware of those horsemen counterattacking. He will probably drop a barracks to address that issue, but now he's pushing the tower. Another tower is being pushed up, and you see, this ram is gonna have its window to potentially start knocking on the walls of that House of Wisdom. Horsemen still ready to intercept the reinforcements, so the berry bushes are now being pushed. Viper actually snuck out some villagers to the north. If you look at the minimap, there are some blue dots up north. Those are villagers on berries that Viper managed to sneak out. That's going to cause problems for DeMusliM because he's unaware of that. And now DeMusliM is going for the houses. That's a good move. Because if he can get Viper to be housed, it's going to be difficult for Viper to add new army over here. You see, Viper is 65 out of 80. Losing 2 houses over there would mean that he's going to fall down to 60 population space here. And Viper is going to have to build new houses over here. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely going to be a little annoying to deal with. Viper's still sitting on a lot of food, still massing some archers, building up a fairly sizable force of horsemen, and you gotta wonder if DeMusliM has any spearmen coming in here to reinforce. The horsemen are still trying to cut off reinforcements over here, and it looks like they're now moving on for a raid. Ram is still pretty active over here. Another tower is going to be dropped by DeMusliM. Now Viper launches the attack with those horsemen. Some longbows will be sent in by DeMusliM. He's so stubborn with those longbows. Now, that's a scary group of longbows. I have to say, 43 longbows is no joke, especially if they do have the upgrades. They do have the ranged attack upgrade. Ranged defense is coming in, but no melee defense, and that's their weakness. Right now, the weakness of DeMusliM's forces will be mass horsemen. That's exactly what Viper is preparing for. And as I said, it's a patience game right now for the Viper. He needs to wait until he has the critical mass of horsemen and take one decisive fight. But that's going to be difficult because those towers for DeMusliM also have arrow slits, making them much more effective against the horsemen, and they also provide a lot of shelter for those longbows. One tower isn't enough to garrison your entire army, but when you have 3 or 4 towers like that, you can garrison your army easily, and those horsemen will have a tough time killing them. Another house will fall from Viper, and so will his mining camp, and just look at the amount of towers for DeMusliM. I really love the way that he's continuously placing towers, because that's his shelter for his army. And of course, Viper could think about counterattacking with the horsemen, but DeMusliM still has his window to add spears back at home, and instead Viper is adding rams. Viper is adding rams, he's ready to push those towers, but the reinforcements are about to come in here for DeMusliM. He's already attacking those archer ranges, and if the archer ranges start falling, suddenly Viper's gonna have a tough time getting army back on the field. But guess what? Longbows are terrible versus rams, and that's exactly what Viper is building his strategy upon. Here comes the big push from Viper. He waited patiently. The tower isn't going to be complete on the right side. The rams of DeMusliM getting taken down. He needs to jump into towers over here, split up his longbows. If he keeps the entire mass together, I don't think that's going to work that well. That's a scary group of longbowmen, however, but I think he should have jumped into the towers, saved some of those longbows, because the amount of firepower coming out of those towers with the longbowmen garrisoned would have helped so much cleaning up all of those horsemen. Looks like Viper is going to have enough to at least push back DeMusliM for the time being, pushing him away from the influence of that Network of Castles bonus, and I think Viper's patience is now paying off. Archers having a larger movement speed than longbows also allows them to pursue. Now all of those horsemen are cleaned up, so suddenly you have a window for DeMusliM to trade over here. There is no defense upgrade for Viper's archers, and longbows already have extra attack over archers over here, so this is a fight that DeMusliM is going to win, but Viper is going to clean up all those towers in front of his base, and now more horsemen are coming. I still feel like DeMusliM went a little too greedy, or just he trusted his longbows a little too much. He didn't add any other unit. And longbows have their weaknesses, as you could see. If you can get some units on the battlefield that are able to absorb the arrow fire, like horsemen, suddenly it becomes a difficult situation for the longbows, and now you see DeMusliM scrambling to drop a barracks. He still has his momentum, however, so this could have been worse, and the towers will still be built. So not the end of the world. Part of the reason why Viper was able to pull this off is because he still has the berries on the north, and that's not something that DeMusliM is aware of. He lost his scout, and he never spotted those villagers sneaking out in the north. For DeMusliM, he thinks that Viper has no access to the berries, so that's part of the reason why he's trusting his longbows this much. He knows fully well, or at least he believes, that Viper has not a lot of food to work with because the berries are untouched here, hunt is running low, not a lot of farms out there. One thing he doesn't know is the excess of gold and berries, and now our spectator is showing that to us. That's the life wire right now for Viper. That's the thing that's keeping him away from defeat. And part of the reason why DeMusliM wasn't able to see that is because he lost that scout in a previous engagement. Longbows once again moving in, trying to contest that gold mine over here. Tower will be finished over here. Very important position now for DeMusliM, because with that tower out there, he's once again going to have the network of castles bonus. He's taking down the tower of his opponent. I think in that is 4 villagers. That could be some juicy pickups here for those longbows. Indeed, the villagers will make a run for it. 2 of them go down, 3 of them will go down. The 4th one also getting killed just before reaching the town center over here. Once again, DeMusliM is in a great position, and he could potentially start pushing that House of Wisdom. Now, you could ask why bother pushing the House of Wisdom, but the answer is rather simple. If you can somehow take it down, because Viper isn't really bothering taking on your rams, then you can potentially prevent the opponent from going castle. Now, Viper is not close to castle, but one of the things that could absolutely annihilate this game plan here for DeMusliM would be a castle age from Viper, because the first couple of Lancers or Men-at-Arms would massacre all of those longbows. So DeMusliM needs to keep Viper in feudal age for the time being. Looks like the spearmen are now catching up with those horsemen. Finally, some spears appearing on the battlefield for DeMusliM. Much needed spearmen, if I may say so. And you see, now Viper is going to somewhat struggle dealing with those because his archers are back at home, but the horsemen are all across the map. So his forces are currently split. Some spears are also accompanying these longbows, and as I said, it's all about knocking on the walls of that House of Wisdom. You probably even want your forward villagers to repair those rams. Viper is going to launch an attack inside the wood line of the opponent. Spearmen apparently not able to track those horsemen, but look at that. The villager riot, English villagers, firing arrows instead of fighting in melee. They could actually fight back against that many horsemen, especially if they do have the textiles upgrade. Looks like the House of Wisdom is still under attack. If you look at the dead bodies, you don't see any villager corpses. All of the dead bodies that you see inside the base of DeMusliM is from horsemen. Not a single villager was lost, I believe, by DeMusliM. He might lose 1 or 2 over here. If you look at the villager count, it's still 51 as opposed to 49, so very, very close. And there is the House of Wisdom going down, and this is going to be key. Because now, first of all, Golden Age is deactivated, which means that Viper's economy is going to be slightly weaker thanks to that. But the big thing is that you're preventing Viper from getting up to Castle Age, which means that it's going to be a full feudal fight, not something that the Abbasids are going to be confident with against the English. You're still lacking spearmen here against the horsemen, but for DeMusliM, now the next step is indeed making towers, because you just want to jump into towers. The moment the cavalry arrives, you jump into towers, and the cavalry can't do anything. You will lose a couple of longbows, but it's going to be impossible for Viper to push this. And this slow tower crawl is exactly what you want to accomplish here for DeMusliM. He's going for ranges. He should set that range on fire and then target the TC. It looks like he's going for the other range over here. Might be a bit of an overextension. That one battering ram running into the horseman, but this way, DeMusliM will see that there is horsemen out there. Viper was trying to conceal his moves. Viper was trying to conceal that army of horsemen, but now DeMusliM is going to be able to see that, and that's crucial. Now, one of the other problems here for Viper is that now the longbows are so close to the TC that they are picking off newly built villagers. So Viper isn't able to add any more vills, because the moment a villager is added, it will be instantly picked off by the longbows. One of the battering rams is heavily damaged. It's going to be pulled back, pushed around by the other battering ram. Knockity knock knock is the name of the game right now for DeMusliM, trying to take down that town center. Viper is massing a large force of horsemen, but now you're seeing a huge amount of spears on the battlefield as well for DeMusliM. And Viper's got some archers. First of all, Viper's horsemen will charge all the way into those spears. Quite a few of them will die. And now Viper tries the 2-pronged attack over here. Does Viper have enough archers to deal with that many spears, though? Because now that's the question. The horseman numbers are great, but look at the amount of spears. Look at the amount of longbows. The longbows with the exit range, they can pick off the archers quite effectively and prevent the archers from killing the spears. Viper will burn down that low HP battering ram, keeping his town center alive in the process, but as I said, Viper isn't really able to add new villagers because every villager that's newly built is getting picked off by those longbows. Meanwhile, Viper is now down by, well, still 2 villagers actually. For a moment it was quite a lot more, but it looks like the 4 villagers making the tower were taken down. As you see, that tower is even getting cancelled. Healing circle coming in for DeMusliM here, also making another battering ram happen. He needs to keep applying pressure, and I love this. Fortification on those towers. It's a very clever move, I would say, from DeMusliM, because it will make it substantially more difficult for Viper to get rid of those towers. In Feudal Age, it's very difficult to get rid of fortified towers out there. And you see, Viper is now hiding his horsemen inside the town center. It's a clever thing to do, because this way, his opponent has no idea what exactly he's facing. He has no idea how many horsemen we're looking at. 67 army, however, for DeMusliM, 49 for Viper. And remember, Viper is forever stuck in Feudal Age. As long as that the House of Wisdom is gone, he isn't able to age up. In fact, he's going to have to invest a lot of resources to repair it if he ever wants to age up. 3 battering rams now coming in. I think this is the moment where Viper has to take this fight. Spearmen are now charging in. The archers from Viper have to focus down those spears, but you gotta wonder if they will even have the window for that. So many villagers getting taken down over here. Bit of an interesting cam over here. This is the POV of what appears to be Viper, and it looks like we're just seeing Viper tap that resign button. Wasn't the best camera angle to finish that game with, but DeMusliM finishes off Viper in game number 1. Curious game plan for Viper, really. I don't exactly know what he had on his mind with that one, because to me it seemed like he was confident that he can hold off the longbows. The key battle of this game, of course, was the battle in the middle, where Viper pushed DeMusliM quite a bit back, but he didn't have enough horsemen to deal with all those longbows. And this is a game of timings. Do you have enough horsemen in the moment that you have to take that fight? And in this battle, the problem for Viper was not the horseman numbers, it was the fact that DeMusliM was allowed to add 15-20 spearmen. And of course, the archers are still there for you to kill the spearmen, but it's very difficult to micro, especially in such a big mass. And every time that DeMusliM feels like he's in danger, he can call off his forces, jump back into the towers, and that's going to be extremely difficult for Viper to push. So DeMusliM always had a good staging ground to arrange a new assault, and he now had the spearman numbers that were required to deal with the horsemen. So the meta civilization pick over here, English for DeMusliM, is going to prevail over the somewhat more unconventional Abbasid approach of the Viper, meaning that Altai, which, well, is game number 1 apparently, I will have to adjust the overlay for that, is going to fall into the hands of DeMusliM. Viper will now bring us to one of his home maps, that being either Dry Arabia or Mongolian Heights. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 2 in this best of 5 between the Viper and DeMusliM. This is the first day of the N4C Main Event from Berlin. On the right side, you're going to have DeMusliM playing as the Rus. Actually, that's the Mongols for him, never mind. On the left side, we have Viper playing as the Rus in blue. It's a little difficult to see the colors because you see the Muslim civilization flag is blue, which is a little deceiving, despite the fact that he's playing in red color, and Viper's civilization flag, the Rus, is in red. So what you have to look out for the colors is going to be the border of the face cams. Right side is DeMusliM playing as the Mongols, and left side is Viper playing as the Rus. The map is Mongolian Heights, which is the first home map of Viper over here, and it looks like a dock is immediately being dropped right now by our blue player, the Viper. Meanwhile, on the other side, an Ovu will be placed straight away by DeMusliM, and now you get asked the question, how do the Mongols match up against the Rus here? And the answer is that this is going to be a very difficult matchup for the Rus, mainly because protecting this dock is going to be an absolute nightmare. If the Mongol player makes 2 spearmen right now, it's already going to be very difficult for the Rus player to protect that dock, and there it is. There's the barracks coming out for DeMusliM, and Viper is yet to add a first fishing ship over here. Now, I'm fairly certain that Viper is aware of the possibility of the spearman pushing his dock. He's a smart cookie. He knows exactly that the Mongols will try to burn that dock down as soon as possible. So you gotta wonder if this is sort of a decoy, because in many ways that could be a way to deal with this. Now, of course, having a Rus on the battlefield means that you are also racing for the huntables here. You could already see Viper gathering a decent amount of wolves behind his scout. That's going to give him a quite decent amount of bounty. You see it's at 120, and that's going to be 145 once that wolf gets taken down. And this is one of the problems that the Mongols face, because the Khan takes 3 shots to kill a deer, whereas the scouts normally just take 2. So the Khan takes a lot more time to kill those huntables, and for this reason, in many cases, you see the Mongol player add an extra scout from the town center, so he has something to kill those huntables with. Looks like that's not going to be the case here for DeMusliM. Instead, he's sending forward the spearman, and so far there's no reaction from Viper, no defensive tower, nothing to protect that dock. So you really gotta wonder what exactly his game plan is with that, because he currently has no tools to hold off spearmen. And if you look at his resources, he's nowhere close to feudal age, so it's not like he's going to pop out any archers. This is somewhat puzzling here, because Viper went to a relatively meta pick, and in many ways I think that the Muslims counter pick here works nicely, because Mongols is a great civilization to deal with any kind of docking attempt over here, except for the Delhi Sultanate, because the Delhi fishing ships would be able to push away the spears. Here come the spears, ready to set fire on that dock. And now, with the additional spears coming in, and also a villager being pulled. You're likely going to see a tower being placed even, so quite a lot of aggressive gameplay over here from the Muslim. Viper is capitalizing to a certain extent on the fishing eco, as you see the Muslim trying to get some shots on that scout, but the Dark Age Con does minimal damage. It's actually lower or comparable to the healing rate of the scouts, so there is no point shooting at the scout with your con at this point. Meanwhile, you are gonna have the Spearman slowly taking down that dock over there, and now it's a dance for the huntables. This is the tricky thing, that the Khan cannot kill a huntable that has been shot once by the scout, because the Khan needs 3 shots. So the damage that the Khan does to a single deer is actually less than what you would need as, or what is left after the first shot happened from the blue scout. So at this point, Viper should be able to collect most of the bounty from across the map. He was being successful gathering the wolves, and he's now going to collect quite a lot of bounty as well from the deer. This being said, now the Muslim is going to set that dock on fire, which means that he's going to get some food and gold. You can see that popping up right there. Of course, Viper doesn't need that dock to be able to drop off fish. That's one of the advantages that you're getting with the Rus, because you can just use those fishing ships, and this might have been the reason why he's going for a Rus, actually. Because by having those fishing ships out there, you don't need a dock to drop off your fish, so you can afford to lose it. Of course, if the Muslim starts adding a dock himself, you're gonna have a tough time, because you could potentially see a single junk potentially pushing it, or towers across the river. So there are tools that the Muslim can use to potentially harass that fishing eco from Viper. For now, the fishing eco is something that Viper is getting away with. Forward tower right now coming in for the Muslim, as the spearmen were a little mispositioned. Scout getting a couple of nice hits on that villager. There is going to be the golden gate for Viper, which allows him to sell the food that he's getting from the fishing eco. Meanwhile, for the Muslim, he's yet to start building his own landmark, which will likely be the deer stones. Spearman trying to find an angle on the lumberjacks. Defensive tower up for Viper, so the spearman won't be able to push the lumberjacks. Spearmen will be boosted by the speed arrow of the Khan so that they can loop around the forest a little faster, and I would think that there is going to be an attempt to make another tower with that villager behind that wood line. There is going to be an archer range being dropped now by Viper, so he's going to respond to those spears with an archer range, but this will also be spotted by the Muslim rather fast, and I wouldn't be surprised to see horsemen or just archers for himself. Because if you think about it, the archers for the Mongols will always overpower the Rus archers, simply because the archers for the Mongols are a lot more affordable than the ones for the Rus. Viper will once again try to poke away at that villager that's trying to build a tower, but there is defensive spearmen, so he really shouldn't be able to. At this point, Viper just wants to keep track of those forces. His fishing eco is still alive in the middle, and it's giving him a quite nice edge when it comes to food economy. You see it's 460 per minute as opposed to 138. But you also have to consider the fact that once we get to Feudal Age, the Muslim will have a lot more tools to deal with those fishing ships as well. Tower will be stopped for the time being as the first archer hits the field. For now, we will see the Muslim call off his forces in all certainty. The question is, how is he going to continue going into Feudal Age? Let's see if we're going to have arrow slits on this tower. That's a possibility for him. He established a forward position over here. He probably doesn't want to let this go away this easily. Feudal Age now in for the Muslim, and now we're asking questions. What are the units? And is he going to contest the water? The answer to the second question is going to be a definite yes. He's dropping the dock over there. Now, of course, Viper can convert his Lodya fishing boats to combat ships, but why would he do that? As long as he's not getting pushed, he is not going to convert any of those fishing ships into combat ships, leaving them very exposed to aggression, as the Muslim is now moving up, pushing away the villagers of Viper from the gold mine. Not a single villager was taken down, but there is a mining camp that is now exposed. The spearmen will throw some torches, so from this point on, that building is marked for death. If Viper deletes it, his opponent still gets the bounty for it. The moment that building gets damaged, you're going to see Viper being unable to lead those buildings without the opponent not getting the resources for it. So far, there seems to be no land units coming to aid those spearmen for the Muslim. He just dropped the dock himself. Viper is going to scout the base of his opponent, and you see that the Muslim is just dropping pastures right now, potentially thinking about just keeping up the pressure and working towards Castle Age. Now, speaking of that, because Viper had such a good fishing eco, and this has been completely untouched and unpunished, he is getting closer and closer to Castle Age. Right now, the Muslim is denying a lot of gold, but keep in mind that Viper has a backup gold mine, and keep in mind that Viper was able to get a lot of gold from bounty. It's 325, plus, of course, whatever he could get from a hunting cabin. I'm not sure if he has a hunting cabin. I don't think that he does. But it's enough gold for Castle Age, and he's getting some more from those wolves. The first light junk is hitting the water right now for the Muslim. That should sink the fishing eco, but I feel like the damage has been done, if I may say so, because Viper already has gotten what he wanted from those fishing ships, and that is food for Castle Age. Now, the Muslim isn't going to be far away. The Mongols have a very effective economy themselves, and as you see, all of these fishing ships will be taken down. They don't take a lot of damage to be sunk when they are fishing boats, and you see Viper is trying to convert them to combat ships. He won't be able to. By the time these are converted to combat ships, most of them will be sunk. He actually might get away with one or two, but you see, that one's gonna be sunk, and that's exactly what you want to do. You want to damage them as much as possible before they are converted to combat vessels, and now you see the spearmen are being pulled as well. That might be a mistake, actually, from the Muslim, because Viper could focus down the Khan or pick off a couple of spears that way. For now, the Tower with the Arrow Slits is denying one of the gold mines for Viper, but Viper has access to the other one, and it looks like the first light junk will be called off. Viper is on the way to Castle Age with the Abbey of the Trinity. Behind this one, the Muslim is kind of far away. The question is what exactly Viper is going to do in Castle. We only see one archer range, so he could try horse archers, but against Mongols, that's not necessarily a spectacular unit to go for, especially not in low numbers, and you gotta wonder if Viper is gonna be able to afford a lot, because now that Viper lost his food eco from the water, suddenly this becomes a different problem. How is he going to access food? Notice that Viper's food per minute is going to start dropping. In the top left corner, you will be able to see that. That is because he's losing access to the fish, and he's not taking his hunt right now, I do believe. He doesn't have access to his berries. So that food per minute is dropping right now because Viper is struggling for food. He still has the sheep to work with, but that's all. After that, he's gonna have to find a way to get some additional alternative sources of food. Looks like Viper is sneaking around with a villager. I wonder where this lady is going. Might be for an additional dock, and he might just try to control the water with demolition ships. That's always an option. Let's see if the Khan is going to spot that, though. I don't think that it will, but it was rather close, so this was quite risky for Viper. There is going to be a siege workshop immediately, possibly for a mangonel. Could, in theory, be Trebuchet, but I think it's going to be a mangonel. Two light junks will take down the Loggia attack ships over here, so with that, all the naval presence of Viper will get eliminated, unless he's able to get a dock up on the southern part of the map, which seems like a realistic possibility at this point. Some fortified palisades coming up here for Viper as he's launching counterattack with the archers. The archers snuck around, and this was not spotted by the Muslim. This is the feast here for Viper. He's going to take down potentially one villager. A second one could be taken down as well. The Yam Speed network is helping a lot for those villagers to escape, and it looks like the Muslim gets away with only two villagers being lost, but there is the retaliation immediately. He dives in with the spears, picks off one villager from Viper. Now Warrior Monk comes into battle, but the Spearman will be able to do quite a lot of damage against it, and a Warrior Monk being lost at this stage would be an absolute disaster for Viper. Looks like he's able to get away with that Warrior Monk for the time being. We're seeing some crossbowmen being added, so he's expecting men-at-arms, he's expecting lancers, the usual composition of the Mongols, but this could leave a window for the Muslim to potentially just go horsemen here. Archers are once again back at the base of the Muslim, and once again he has to pull the villagers. You don't see that, but, well, you don't see it on the main cam, but you can see it on the minimap that he had to pull away the gold miners again. Castle Age has to be on the way here for the Muslim, right? I will think that he is going into Castle right now. Indeed, in Castle he is, and it looks like there is going to be a stable being dropped. And I assume that the building that is crawling up towards that gold mine is going to be a step redoubt. Viper will probably get some shots on it with the archers, but he's not going to be able to damage it substantially. And the single lancer should be able to deal with all those archers because there is no crossbow support. Currently, we're looking at 38 versus 43 villagers, so slight villager advantage we are talking about right now in the favor of the Muslim. And now he's going to use the extra attack that Khan has upon reaching Castle Age to do some damage on the lumberjacks. And indeed, you see horsemen, not knights, not men-at-arms. You're seeing horsemen because he already spotted the crossbows. Viper preemptively went for crossbowmen to try and deal with the inevitable men-at-arms and lancer push. As a response, the Muslim is going to add horsemen to deal with this one, and he should be successful doing that. The villager will go down over here to the archers. Two men-at-arms were also added just for good measure, and now you're going to see those archers all getting cleaned up. The Muslim also has spotted the dock on the south, and now he can think about adding war junks himself. The Khan gets picked off by a springald up north. Look, Viper was patrolling those springolds left and right, managed to find the Khan of the opponent. But all the archers are now cleaned up. Viper still being denied from that gold mine, but Viper has the river now, and he could start adding demolition ships. For now, he's adding just fishing eco. In the middle part, you still have a dock, of course, for DeMusliM, and keep in mind, he's also fishing now. Viper is ready to start picking up relics over here. He is bringing back relic number 2, I believe. It's actually relic number 1 only that he's bringing back, so he's yet to pick up most of the relics over here, but he's on course to doing that. He takes the long route around his base. He has to because the towers are preventing the warrior monks from escaping or just leaving the base of Viper. Now you have 1 combat ship versus 2 light junks over here. Viper is pulling a fishing ship to repair. In this scenario, you have to focus down the fishing ship over here, and that's exactly what DeMusliM is going for. He sinks 1, and he's now going to have to focus on the second fishing ship. He will soon have to pull the light junk away as well. Looks like he's not focusing over here, and he is going to lose that 1 light junk over here, so he trades 1 combat vessel to a fishing boat of the opponent. Up north, however, there is attack notifications going off all the time thanks to those towers. And that is one of the problems that Viper is facing. When those towers are in his face, attacking his buildings, the attack notifications are non-stop. Which means that it's very difficult for him to spot fights anywhere. Because he's constantly getting attack notifications about engagements, and that's actually just the towers in front of his base. Now, Viper is going to use Springolds to clean up the water. In the most recent patch, the Springolds received an anti-boat or anti-ship damage bonus, and that's going to help a lot cleaning up the fishing eco. Clever move from Viper, now adding a second town center as well. So you get the feel that Viper is gaining a bit of a confidence over here. A war junk, however, is being added over here, kills one of the Springolds, and now the Lancers and the Man-at-Arms could jump on the other Springold. There is 2 crossbows over there, but that's not gonna be enough to deal with all the Lancers out there. In fact, the crossbows are mispositioned, so the war junk will deal with the crossbows, and the cavalry will deal with the Springolds. Some more crossbows are hitting the field. DeMusliM is going to see them right now, so he will probably start adding a lot more horsemen. DeMusliM, however, sitting on a ton of food, so he can easily add a large amount of horsemen, large amount of knights potentially. Ecos still rather even, as now those forces are crawling closer and closer to those crossbowmen. Down south, Viper has just 1 fishing ship, so not a lot of benefit from that water control right now. And now you're seeing a trebuchet set up. It's probably going to try and target that war junk. Indeed, it gets a direct hit on the war junk. War junk will be repaired by the dock. You just want to micro left and right, trying to make sure that that trebuchet cannot take down your war junk here. Looks like Viper is very heavy on the archer department, dropping multiple archer ranges over here. And I do believe that we could see DeMusliM trying to push the southern dock very soon with those Lancers and potentially Man-at-Arms. He saw the crossbows, yet he's still committed to the Lancers, which could be a mistake, however. He's trying to dive in on that trebuchet, though. He knows that he's going to lose some of those Lancers, but the Lancers have a ton of damage output against those trebuchets, and that's exactly what he's counting on. He's throwing those torches. Viper is pulling the villagers to repair, but just a little too late over here. It looks like the Springold could also get taken down. Viper comes in with the repair. Repair still going on. It looks like the Springold will be safe, or will it be safe? It looks like with their final bits of HP left, that Lancer and the Man-at-Arms cleans up the siege weapons here. It wasn't a super effective fight here for DeMusliM. He lost a lot of cavalry and infantry here, but he took down the siege weapons of the opponent, which means that his dock lives to see another day, making it very difficult for Viper to push through. Looks like the war junk is gone, however, or is it? It's sailing south right now as we speak. A tower was attempted in the middle by DeMusliM, has to be cancelled. Springold now set up once again. Springolds do outrange war junk, so this is a fight that Viper can take, and indeed he will take it. DeMusliM will likely lose that war junk in the middle. War junk still being repaired by the dock as the Springold opens up against it. It still takes a lot of projectiles to take down war junks, however, so DeMusliM will have his window to react. Still double Lancer and Lancer production for DeMusliM. Feels a little too stubborn on the Lancer department. Against that many crossbows, you need something against them. If you have some horsemen, it's workable. Khan getting taken down by all those crossbows. You get the feel that DeMusliM is just a little stubborn on unit compositions, because in the previous game he went very heavy on the longbows. It worked out in that case. But you gotta wonder if you want to go full Lancers against full crossbowmen. And Viper's got some Springolds, so Mangonels isn't really going to work out easily either for our red player, DeMusliM. Meanwhile, Viper's got 3 relics to work with. In theory, we could see a prayer tent being dropped by the Muslim, just roll around the map, pick the rest of the relics up. So it's a possibility for him to secure the additional relics. Looks like he's sending the cavalry to the south, however, trying to intercept that warrior monk that's taking away that relic. That warrior monk is likely going to get taken down. Viper will probably attempt a Vololo here, but there's no chance for that. That warrior monk will be taken down, indeed. Not even a Vololo attempted. And now you could potentially try and take down that dock, because you want to make sure you don't let Viper back on water. Warjunk might have an angle on this Springald, however, and it only takes 2 projectiles for the Warjunk to stink a Springald, and that's exactly what we're seeing over here. The Springald got taken down quite easily by the Warjunk, and with that, Viper loses another one. Behind this one, keep in mind, Viper does have a second town center, so he's got 67 eco over 59, but his opponent, of course, being the Mongols, has got the step red up, got some fishing eco going as well. And in general, his unit production is very effective. So at this point, I think the ecos are rather even. If you look at the resource incomes per minute, those seem to favor Viper a tiny bit more. Lancer is now trying to sandwich themselves through over here. Wars weren't finished, and now the Lancers will jump on the dock. There is no demolition ship at all. Viper could think about converting that fishing ship into a demo, but I think it would be a little too late. The question is whether or not DeMusliM has gotten any of the torch upgrades. Because one of the things that you can do here is get the raiding bounty upgrades to get more resources from burning down those buildings. We didn't see how much he got because we're on Viper's POV right now. But that's actually a good thing, especially if you're on a raid like this. And I think DeMusliM is now realizing that Viper is having a very slow army. The crossbows, the Springolds are disturbingly slow, and now you see a 2-pronged attack coming in. That's a very good move here from DeMusliM. He's actually going to intercept a couple of crossbowmen over here, and Viper, he's in a bit of a troublesome spot because now his crossbows are completely mispositioned. The front of his base could be wide open for that group of Lancers to charge in, and up north, he's also going to find a window to strike at the villagers, mining the stone. There goes Viper's villager differential. And now a castle is being built in the middle. You gotta wonder if that is even going to get finished. And every time an exposed mining camp like that gets burnt down, it is going to be bounty given for the Muslim, who is already 1 game ahead. And now the Lancers have an absolute fiesta, jumping on all of those Springolds. The Lancers won't care about the few crossbowmen fighting them. Viper moved on to react to the attack that came on his dock. And his army now is mispositioned, and this is something that DeMusliM is using so well over here. All the siege weapons going down, the castle has been stopped, and now you have Lancers inside the economy of Viper over here. Viper already lost a lot of villagers on the right side. He will lose a few more over here to the Lancers. Not all villagers will fit into that town center. Ultimately, Viper cleans this up, but the amount of damage that was done by the Lancers over here is significant. Quite substantial, in fact. Took down the most important part of Viper's army as well, the Springolds, so now Mangonels are a lot more legitimate for the Muslim to use, and it looks like he's coming in with the Lancers once again, trying to stop that castle again, and he will be successful, killing quite a lot of villagers over here. He's gonna have his window to burn down the Springald as well. That he does. He's gonna have to call off his forces now, facing a lot of crossbowmen over here, but he's just amping up the pressure left and right. Viper still has 4 relics, but he's falling behind in villager count, and he's slowly getting suffocated by the mobility advantage of the Mongols here. Because, once again, you could see the Muslim just charging in. Volo attempt coming in here from Viper. This is going to discourage those crossbows from pushing in. Viper really wants that keep in the middle. There is actually a tower being placed right next to that keep by the Muslim. It looks like he's committed to this charge, but he's fighting the crossbowmen, which allows the castle to go up over here. A couple of villagers might actually fall, all of them being garrisoned right now. Looks like the Muslim is still tempted to push this one, however. Might be a slight overextension against that many crossbowmen, and of course the castle fire, but instead he's just going to send his cavalry back to the base of Viper. That's exactly what you want. You just want to make sure that those crossbows keep pursuing you as you trickle in more reinforcements and as you contest that keep with a potential trebuchet. Now the reinforcements from the Muslim are being cut off by that castle, so he has to be careful, but it's all about that mobility component now for our red player. He has to stretch out Viper's attention, because if he is able to do that, it's going to be very difficult for this Rus player to deal with this one. Looks like he's falling into a trap, however. The crossbows are able to clean up most of the Lancers over here. Lancers still struggling to find targets for themselves. They will find a couple of villagers on the stone. Viper will pull them away. But as you see, some Lancers are being sent to the north. And look at those towers. Those towers are preventing Viper from potentially sneaking some units through the river. And what's more important is that they are expanding the YAM network, meaning that the Muslims' mobility all across the map is insane, allowing him to easily get a flanking maneuver on, and it looks like there was an opening over there the whole time that the Muslim will use to just get out of this situation. 74 villagers over 66 right now. Eco lead in the favor of the Muslim. He's only got 16 Lancers, however, and one thing that you still have to consider is that he doesn't have a direct answer to the crossbows. He's got the Lancers, and as long as he's the one initiating the fights, this is great for him. But the moment Viper is able to counterattack, this becomes a significant problem for DeMusliM because he doesn't have the answer to those crossbows just yet. Meanwhile, the tower is going to get cleaned up. There is an emplacement coming onto it, but it's going to be short-lived. The castle is doing quite a lot of damage here to the war junk. DeMusliM still controlling the river, but with a springboard rolling up, it's likely going to be a war junk sunk. Crossbows reinforcing the northern walls. Villager was also pulled to repair the walls. DeMusliM hasn't pulled his cavalry back up until now. Tower still alive, however, going for an arrow slits emplacement. Viper is still trying to clean up that single war junk on the river. Now, if we get to Imperial, the Mongols have access to the Baoshuan, which is the same cannon ship as the Chinese have, but the range they have it is much smaller than the Chinese. So it's going to be interesting to see if DeMusliM is going to utilize any of that, but I think at this point, the thing that DeMusliM has to focus on is just having an answer to those crossbows. The only unit Viper is making is crossbows. The only unit that DeMusliM is making is Lancers, and crossbows do counter Lancers in a direct engagement. So the only thing that DeMusliM can do is utilize his mobility, but that's going to be difficult against all of those fortified palisade walls that Viper has. And it's still just Lancers. DeMusliM really is just a man of flooding units at this point, which could or could not work. There's the first Trebuchet out there, counterweight Trebuchet getting some rocks on that castle, and the Lancers will once again push in. Notice that Viper pulled a lot of his crossbows to the north to deal with the Lancers trying to push through the walls. And this could give a window for these Lancers to potentially charge in through the middle. Indeed, as you see, quite a lot of crossbows from Viper are busy repelling this attack, which gives a window for these crossbows to push. There is 2 springboards over here for Viper, but losing those springboards will mean that you will expose your crossbows to the now newly built mangonel of DeMusliM. And the moment we're seeing mangonels on the battlefield, Viper's life depends on those springboards. It's all about that. You lose the springboards, you have no tools to respond to those mangonels. Viper is adding quite a lot of barracks, so he's making a spearman switch, which could actually come as a surprise for DeMusliM. He's so resilient, borderline stubborn with the Knight's play, that Viper making spearman over here could come as a nasty surprise for him. Because the mangonels will perform at an acceptable level against the springboards, or excuse me, the spearmen. But the spearman is a very inexpensive way to deal with an expensive unit composition of DeMusliM. He's getting a second trebuchet out. He first wants to take down the keep, then roll over, send in the cavalry, deal with the springboards, and then send in the mangonels. That's the game plan over here. However, is that an Imperial Age I'm seeing? You bet it is. The high armory coming in for Viper, and DeMusliM has committed most of his resources into a Castle Age push. So he needs to push right here, right now. Because if Viper gets to Imperial, this turns out to be a disaster. In fact, I feel like the window for DeMusliM might already be closing, and he's like, oh shoot, now I'm in trouble. He tried to be the aggressor, but for a long time he wasn't really able to accomplish much. Viper setting up the springboards, unleashing a volley on the first trebuchet. The trebuchets will be forced back for the time being. But DeMusliM isn't able to break this stalemate, which means that Viper now has the chance to get the Imperial Age upgrades for the crossbows, has the chance to get the range upgrades for the springboards, making them 30.5 range, which is a lot, especially against Castle Age units. And most importantly, he's able to potentially start adding elite spearmen as well. Indeed, here come the spears. I feel like DeMusliM's window is closing over here. The game looked good for him for a long time, but now he needs to push. It's now or never for DeMusliM, but Viper springboards are quite a bit mispositioned, and they will be taken down quite easily. Suddenly, you're seeing the mangonels crawling up. Viper reinforcing the battlefield with more springboards, however. The keep is still being fired upon by the trebuchets. DeMusliM taking his time to make this push happen, but if he's not going into Imperial, I don't know what exactly his response is going to be to Viper's play over here with the spears and the crossbowmen. And Viper is repairing that keep. He knows fully well that he needs to buy himself some time. And on the other side, for DeMusliM, I don't see anything coming in. I see some horsemen now being mixed in, but it's too late. It's too late now because you're facing spearmen. So horsemen will no longer be able to swing the battle in your favor, and now you see the long-range springboards for Viper. He's able to capitalize on that and starting to push back those trebuchets. Now I feel like the only window for DeMusliM would be to potentially try and get some flanking maneuvers in and try to get a raid going. One thing that he could do is get some more docks and get some demolition ships, because demolition ships would slow down Viper's advance and scare him away from water. And you could use that window to flank around with 50 Lancers and just hit the walls on the left side. If you can hit those walls, you can still break in rather easily, and Viper doesn't have mobility. but you need to prevent Viper from crossing the river, and that you can accomplish best with some demolition ships. The Muslim is not far away from Imperial, so he has that on the horizon as well. Viper sitting on 4 relics, still obviously helping a lot to his economy. The Muslim still with a slight eco lead. Looks like the Lancers are now crossing the river, or at least they are attempting to do that. Viper now gets a confirmation that all of those Lancers are on the south. So back at home, he needs to start walling up. Looks like the Warjunk is doing a pretty decent job cleaning some of those Springolds out there. No demolition ship from Viper to sink all of those Lancers. Lancers will break through the first layer. Viper is converging on this location with his crossbows. You can see that on the minimap. So the Muslim, he's going to sink that Lodi attack ship. Viper is converting that fishing ship to a demo. He's converting that fishing ship to a demo, and you gotta be really careful here. I wonder where that conversion process is. The demo pops off, but it's not going to sink any of those Lancers but one. Last second save there for the Muslim. The moment you see that fishing ship moving slow, you need to know that that is going to be a conversion into demolition ship, and that's exactly what we saw now. And now the entire gold income of the Muslim could be in jeopardy if Viper decides to launch a counterattack. Luckily for the Muslim, Viper is playing this one patiently, and this is giving a window for the Muslim to get to Imperial or get some sort of units out on the field that's capable of dealing with both the archers or the crossbowmen and the spearmen. That should be, in theory, archers, maybe Mangadai. That's a lot of rocks flying around. We are talking about some mangonels hitting the field. Trebuchets are also out there, but as long as Viper's got the Springolds, this isn't going to work for the Muslim. The Muslim now up to Imperial, however, and if he gets the improved roller shard triggers, his Springolds will have just as much range as the Springolds of Viper. Viper with the Rus, having the unique upgrade on the Springold range, she has 30.5, and improved roller shard triggers for the Mongol player pushes it up to 13. So the Springolds will be rather even here for the two sides if that improved upgrade comes in here. I don't see a Siege Workshop in the influence radius of the Ovu, however, so that's not going to be a possibility anytime soon for the Muslim. But he's up to Imperial, and you can see on the far right, in the queue, there is a Baoshuan queued up. It's not as powerful as it is for the Chinese, but it's still a very good-looking ship, and it is an insane amount of combat value added over here. Viper is trying to take down those docks, I do believe. Baoshuan now pops out, and that is going to deliver a ton of firepower out there. Look at that, 2000 HP, it's able to take down the Springolds, and that's the key thing. Getting rid of those Springolds, because the moment the Springolds are gone, courtesy of that Baoshuan, suddenly the Mangonels will have a way to push through. And that's the key thing here. You're using your Baoshuan to get rid of those Springolds. At least buy yourself some time to get the Springold upgrade over here. Now Mangonels unleashing death and destruction. Viper has the staggered formation, so it's going to be difficult to get great hits with those Mangonels. But 4 Mangonels is a ton of firepower, something that Viper has to respect. The Muslim also banking up a ton of resources. Viper still at 86 villagers, the Muslim at 111. Now the Mangonels are all set up, and the Baoshuan can also start taking down that keep over there. One of the other advantages that you can have for that Baoshuan. It's an anti-building ship. Looks like a bit of a mass micro here by the Mangonels of the Muslim. He's going to lose one, getting a second one heavily damaged. And it looks like Viper is going to take down a second one here as well. There is going to be trebuchets trying to find an angle to hit those castles, but right now, what you want for the Muslim is that Baoshuan with the Chaser Cannons upgrade. Because the Chaser Cannons will allow him to have one extra range that would help a lot against those keeps. Springolds now once again setting up against that dock. If the improved roller shard triggers upgrade comes in for the Muslim, he's also going to have his window to shoot back at those Springolds. So far, the mobility of the Muslim wasn't really exploited. So despite the fact that he's got quite a lot of cavalry, he didn't really came in for a lot of counterattacks. This time around, however, he's deciding to make a push through the southern part of the map. The gates could be burned down rather easily. Viper is going to have to adjust his army, but I think this is just a decoy. This has to be a decoy by the Muslim. Look at that red blob to the north of the base of the Muslim. He knows very well that Viper is going to send his army here to deal with this. Viper's got a new dock build, by the way, so demolition ships could come in any moment. Elite Lancer upgrade now in. And you see that the Muslim sees the army over here, and he's going to launch his attack in the middle. That's probably the part of the plan here. He knows very well that the Viper is going to react to a push to the south by pulling his forces, and this allows him to potentially push the middle with trebuchets, the Baoshuan. Looks like he was a little late moving up because he's seeing the forces retreat, so he's actually crossing the river with those Lancers, but now they're stranded because there's a demolition ship out there, and suddenly you will have to fight here with those Lancers. And the corner that the Muslim is running towards could easily fall, or could easily be his trap. It could be his demise. A Bombard is coming out right now for Viper, ready to sink that Baoshuan, and that's doing a ton of damage on it. There's a counterattack, however, and this is what I was referring to. Do you need those Lancers on the left side? It's going to be insanely painful to lose these. And at this point, the best thing that DeMusliM can do is just make a run for Viper's base. But he knows fully well that Viper's entire army is on the left side, and Viper currently has no response to the push in the middle. Those Lancers are trapped in there. There's just nowhere to go for them right now, but this is going to come at a price for Viper. He's losing one of the castles over here, and he's losing a substantial amount of his springholds as well. Still some more springholds close to the riverfront. They will start taking down those siege weapons. One castle falls. On the left side, however, the spearmen now clean up the Lancers. A lot of losses here for the DeMusliM. That's the price that he paid for distracting Viper. Now he could try to make a run for this one because Viper called off his crossbow, so there is actually a window to retreat, and Viper is realizing that the DeMusliM is making a run for it, so he's going to try to cut off the escape path. I feel like the DeMuslim's best bet right now is to try and find a way into Viper's eco, but I don't think there is. It was a risky move for the DeMusliM to cross the river with all those Lancers, Viper having a dock out there, and now Viper is cutting off his retreat path over here. But oh boy, the crossbows are just being mispositioned. Look at this, the Lancers will head the northeast, and they will just hit these springholds. That's exactly what's gonna happen. The crossbows lost track of those knights. Viper was trying to cut off the escape path through the river, and now those Lancers will head north, and once again, they're outmaneuvering Viper's army, and they will have a window to jump on all of those juicy springholds out there, because they're completely undefended. Not a single spearman heading over there, or even better, just head straight into the eco. Now the Lancers from the right side are hitting the springholds. Looks like the DeMusliM is also going to jump on those. The Streltsy are hitting the field right now, but look at that. All of the springholds now getting taken down by the Lancers. Most of the forces that the DeMusliM had stranded on the side of Viper's river is going to survive one way or another. Quite a lot of Lancers went down, but Viper lost so many springholds here as well. Still no intention from the DeMusliM to get any kind of pressure done on Viper's eco on the north, as we do see the sacred site down at the south captured by Viper. An extra amount of gold to work with. The Baoshan are still doing work over here. Springholds trying to take them down from a distance. One of them gets sunk, and the Springholds will now focus down the Trebuchet. The DeMusliM is trying to continuously push through, but I feel like the biggest problem that he's facing is that he's just so stubborn with the unit composition, and it's starting to get frustrating. It was frustrating in the previous game as well, where he just went full longbows for such a long time, but he's been spamming Lancers for the last 25 minutes. Despite the fact that his opponent has the perfect unit composition to counter that. Rus Springholds, Spearmen, and Crossbowmen, your Lancers can't do anything against this. Now here comes the counterattack to the north this time around, and that could be a lot more dangerous because a significant portion of Viper's eco is actually on the north, and you see the Springholds are getting taken down in the middle by the Baoshuan. That's all you want to focus on. You don't care about the army, you just focus down the Baoshuan out there. Would be beautiful for the DeMusliM to build the demo and try to sink this army over here. Looks like the Baoshuan will be sunk. A new one is hitting the field, but guess what? The Lancers are burning their way through the walls. Viper is going to evacuate his villagers, but the right side is a lot weaker than the left side is. Baoshuan still being very effective against all those land units out here, but another one is sunk, and those are expensive vessels. So the DeMusliM once again is losing a tremendous amount of value over here. Viper getting a defensive castle up over here will be finished just in time. Will provide shelter for most of those villagers under attack by those Lancers. You gotta wonder if there is boiling oil on it, and the answer is no. So the Lancers could actually think about just killing the villagers underneath it. Viper detaches some forces, sending them to the north. That should be enough to deal with some of the Lancers over here. And once again, the DeMusliM bumps into walls here. And this is the problem here for the DeMusliM. He's been bumping into walls for such a long time, and the reason why that's happening is because he's very stubborn and playing with one unit composition. It's not even a composition. It is purely just Lancers. And now Viper is pushing through the middle. Elite infantry tactics is coming in right now for the DeMusliM, so we are finally going to see some military, or like infantry, being mixed in here. Could be archers. That's going to be an interesting scenario. You got some bombards over here. Springholds are opening up against the bombards, but the Mangonels could have a volley out here against that infantry. Looks like the Springholds will take down the first Mangonel. However, Mangonels are opening up against all that infantry. Viper has to scramble back through the river, and suddenly he's the one stranded on this side of the river. The Mangonels will take down so much infantry over here. The Springholds will get rid of the Mangonels, but what's the cost of this one for Viper? He's losing so much infantry over here, especially the crossbowmen, because those crossbows were so impactful dealing with the heavy units, and look at that. Volley after volley from those Mangonels, wiping out an insane amount of infantry, and that's the infantry that kept the Lancers from the DeMusliM away. from Viper's base. All the infantry is now gone for Viper. He has dropped 50 population in just a split second, and now the window for the Muslim to potentially counterattack this one with Lancers is wide open. Still, the Muslim struggling with population himself, and you get the feel that there was just so many Lancers thrown away over here. The Manganos once again getting some nice hits over there, but they are still being taken down by Springolds. And the biggest problem for the Muslim is that he tried to initiate things, but he just wasn't able to accomplish anything with that, because small things are going wrong. Viper still has a dog down south. The Muslim never really had demolition ship to potentially threaten Viper when Viper thinks about crossing the river. He had one attempt to push the north, that wasn't really a success. Manganol gets a successful out, but you're going to have the Springolds once again sniping the Manganols out there. Another Manganol comes out for the Muslim. He's going to get another volley of rocks out, but why not a single archer? That's the question that I'm still asking to the Muslim. And I'm starting to feel like he's throwing away this game by going for a unit composition that he's just so stubbornly insisting on. The Streltsy, the Crossbowmen, the Spearmen, these will wipe out Men-at-Arms, these will wipe out Lancers, and I'm just not understanding what the Muslim is doing right now. Because he's being pushed back. So you would think that your unit composition is inferior if you're getting constantly pushed back over here. You're still trying to play around with Manganols, but it is blatantly obvious that the Springolds are able to snipe them. So an adjustment in unit composition could have been there. Viper has no Manganols at all. So 15-20 archers would have helped so much over here. Now the Lancers will jump on the Springolds. This is a window for the Muslim to potentially try to get something out of this game here. He snipes the Bombard here. He could snipe all of those Springolds as well. And the Men-at-Arms are actually taking some good fights against all the spears. But the castle goes up here. There is a Bombard from the Muslim to take it down. But the Muslim's army is just vanishing. 21 army against 74, and the Viper is in a commanding position right now. Did the Muslim just throw away a game? Because I get the feel that he did. He had so many things going for him in this game, and Viper, he had an exceptional defense over here. But the main thing here, and this is the thing that the Muslim has to be frustrated about, because I myself as a caster, I'm super frustrated about just seeing a spam, a never-ending spam of Lancers with Manganols. And at the beginning, it seemed to work. But the moment it stops working, you have to adjust. Viper has been adjusting his unit composition this entire game. He saw the Lancers, he saw the Man-at-Arms, he went crossbows. He realized that his opponent is reacting with Manganols, and he invested a ton into Springolds. Viper was spamming Springolds left and right, knowing that the Muslim is going for Manganols. Yet you saw no change in direction for the Muslim. All you could see was him maintaining the same unit composition. And that was a thing in game number 1 as well, and I feel like this is something that he needs to consider going forward into game number 3. He needs to adjust his unit composition a little bit better or a little more frequently. He can't stay with a unit composition that's clearly inferior compared to that of the opponents. This being said, this was a great game as well from the Muslim, and Viper is definitely having a tough time so far with him. For now, this is a win for the Viper, so the score is now even. But Viper definitely is forced to run for his money over here. The Muslim and Viper seem to be quite even in terms of skills, or at least based on the first 2 games. These 2 players have both won an S-tier H1 Paris 4 tournament before, EGC Genesis for Viper, and the Muslim won the Steel Series Prime Cup. These are the 2 players that got invited to N4C, the other 6 qualified, so the 2 invited players now battle it out over here. We'll come back with game number 3 very shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 3. In between the Viper and the Muslim, the scoreline is even Steven. We're at 1-1. And what a better way to settle a tie than a Holy Roman Empire mirror on Hill and Dale. So far, we have seen 2 matches where the civilizations were massively different. 1 win for the Muslim on Altai, 1 win for the Viper over here. This is the first home map of the Muslim, and we're going to see an HRE mirror. Now, it's difficult to tell who a mirror is favoring, because usually it's the more skilled player, but I think at this point, based on the first 2 games, we can safely say that these 2 players are head-to-head when it comes to skills. So, I don't think that a mirror actually favors anyone over here. It's gonna come down to very small details, and so far in this set, I get the feel that those small details actually went in the favor of Viper, especially based on the previous game. So we'll have to see how the Muslim is able to adjust to that. Spawning on the northern side of the map is gonna be the Muslim in red, and down south we will have the Viper playing as the blue color. So, Relic spawns are rather even over here. You got a slightly better spawn probably for our blue player Viper, with one relic being rather close to his base in the middle area, the middle exit of his hill. There is one relic in between two forests over here, sneaking around, and look at that, that's a lot of wolves lying around that relic. So you get the feel that that's going to be a little tricky to pick up if you just send out your prelate. So this is one of those matchups where you have to be really considerate of the unit compositions. You can think about feudal age pressure with spears, potentially some horsemen, try to control the map and make sure that your opponent isn't able to pick up relics. But you're risking falling behind in the castle age timing and just falling to more powerful castle age units. However, if you go fast castle, you risk your opponent making a couple of spears and voling you in. And I do believe that in this matchup, the best way to do this, and I think the reason why we are having our observer watch this, is because we're unsure if this relic could be picked up from the bottom. I think you can pick it up, but it's going to be tricky. If you can't pick it up from the bottom, that's, well, tough luck for Viper. He's got still one relic a little closer to his base compared to Mista, if you look at that one, to the north of his central exit. But I do feel like at this point, that's a minimal difference. Obviously, you can't have perfectly balanced relic spawns. It's impossible to have it. Or at least, not until we have custom maps. Which, hopefully, will be a thing in the future. Chapel right now coming in here for our blue player, the Viper. He's placing it around his hunt and the gold mine. This is something I want to talk about, because on the other side, you will have a slightly better Chapel spot for the Muslim. He's going to have all of his villagers, even the berry villagers, but most importantly the hunters, the gold miners, the lumberjacks, and the villagers underneath the town center, all affected by the Chapel. That's the perfect spot for the Muslim to place it at. So beautiful Chapel spot for him. It's a good spot as well for Viper, but not as good as the one for the Muslim, because he doesn't have his wood line covered in it. Viper still mining quite a lot of gold over here. Professional Scouts is also a build that we occasionally see from HRE, especially in the early days of HRE being used on this map. Professional Scouts was quite common, because you could potentially bring in the other patch of hunt from the bottom of the hill, and maybe even steal some carcasses from the opponent's patch in the dale area. So you could get yourself about 6, 7, 10-ish huntables with minimal investment. Well, the technology itself is rather expensive, but the return value is also quite decent. If you think about it, having 10 huntables or 10 deer carcasses extra to work with while under the effect of the Chapel is a substantial boost to your food economy. Looks like Viper is just going to mill his own huntables over here right next to the Chapel, and for the Muslim, so far he hasn't touched his huntables yet. He is yet to reach feudal age here, slightly slower construction of the Chapel compared to Viper. Looks like Viper just found the town center of the opponent. Chapel finishes right now for the Muslim. He was rather successful collecting sheep. You see there is quite a lot of sheep underneath his town center. Unsure how much Viper has below his TC. We'll have to see once our observer shows at the TC, and the answer is minimal. Viper has a limited amount of sheep to work with. Not the end of the world, as Viper... Oh, he yoinks 2 sheep! What a move! What a move! That reaction is something that you commonly see from all pro players. The moment the scout passes the villagers, you hit the sheep, because you can one-shot a sheep with a villager, and Viper used 2 villagers to kill 2 sheep, so that's going to be 2 extra sheep to work with for him. Those are rather far away from that mill, but still, that's 2 extra sheep to work with, right? So underneath the town center, Viper doesn't have a lot of sheep, and you see he's even dropping a mill next to the berries, so he's going to play with double mills. Little surprising to see him taking the berries when he has access to the hunt right now. He probably could have avoided investing into that mill. Little surprising over there. He does have a second pellet out, however, it's boosting the lumberjacks, and it's also boosting that berry villager, so it's being microed back and forth between those positions so that he's able to maximize its efficiency. 2 scouts now nearby here for the Muslim. He's coming in to harass those gold miners. The prelates can heal the villagers back up, so this is not really a major threat at this point, but obviously, a bit of a damage is being done. The damage, however, could be done by the horsemen, and I refer to this one. Are you risking a feudal age pressure and potentially risking your opponent beating you to castle age and just getting some more powerful units out in castle? Or are you going straight to castle? Viper's answer seems to be straight castle, whereas the Muslim wants to go for pressure, and because the villagers have to be pulled away for the gold from Viper, this could be troublesome. Viper doesn't have the gold for castle age just yet. And because of those scouts, he has to pull away the villagers. If the villagers were untouched by the scouts, he would have the gold he needs by now. And this is one of the main reasons why this sort of scout push here from the Muslim actually works out so well. Viper added the stable himself to try and repel this attack. And of course, he's going to have an easier time reinforcing this battle because he's got the stable right next to his base. But the Muslim is playing double stable, ton of aggression, and one thing that Viper doesn't have here is enough gold for Castle Age. And that's exactly the position that the Muslim wants to be in. Viper doesn't have enough gold to go into Castle, which means that the Muslim, despite the fact that he is not having the resources for Castle Age either, he's not going to fall behind in Castle Age timing. Now, looks like he's shifting away from that gold mine, which could leave a window for Viper to gather the 130 gold he needs here. Viper adding a barracks instead, adding a couple of spearmen as a response to those horsemen. But behind this one, now the Muslim is adding resources to his resource bank, and suddenly he's getting closer and closer to Castle Age as well. He forced Viper to make a barracks, and the thing is that Viper doesn't know how many horsemen his opponent will make. He can scout it, he has a scout at the front in fact, but he needs to keep investing into army as long as the Muslim has the window to push him. And the Muslim can stop making army anytime. That's one of these situations where one player is sort of forcing the opponent to defend, and Viper right now, despite the fact that he's got the scout on the front, he does not know how much army to make. Because any moment, the Muslim could appear with some more forces out there. You see, for now, Viper is repelling this assault, but at this point, the Muslim is the aggressor, starting to kill some villagers on that wood line. The Prelate is in danger, is making a run for a town center. Viper popping out some more spears. Retreat will be called here for the Muslim, but guess what? He's going to click up to Castle Age as we speak. Viper is also going to drop his Ragni's Cathedral, so it's head-to-head into Castle Age, but you do have 9 military for Viper, 9 as well for the Muslim. The Muslim with more mobility though. His entire army is horsemen, which gives him mobility, which gives him the ability to dive in and snipe the Prelates, whereas for Viper, some of his units are spears, which will struggle to just run across the map and potentially pick off Prelates, or just protect the Prelates that are carrying in the relics, and that's exactly the game plan right now for the Muslim. He's gonna have the mobility advantage, allowing him to potentially snipe the first couple of Prelates arriving. There's a unit in the middle, the blue unit, that just got past all of those red units out there. Yeah, the red horsemen are coming in right now, and there was a blue unit that actually paused them. There's a Prelate moving out, and this is what I was talking about. You want to intercept those Prelates, and for that, the only thing that you need is mobility. The spearmen are irrelevant if they can't fight this. Viper is going to have 3 horsemen out here. It looks like the Muslims' monk here is a little idle. Some of the horsemen will be dispatched over there to help, and that's going to help a lot for Viper because Viper will be able to pick up this relic in the middle, or will he? Looks like a Prelate is making a run for this one. Viper is a little too fast to the party compared to the Muslim, and Viper is going to yoink the relic away from the Muslim. The Muslim has 1 relic being brought back as well. Pops the Vololo to try and discourage the horsemen from fighting this. Viper, however, wants to fight this one, and he takes down the monk without losing a single horseman to the Vololo. This could be big, because now 1 Prelate is down for the Muslim out there. Viper picked up the first relic. In fact, if you look at the top left indicator, Viper already has 2 relics in his hand. Those are not necessarily garrisoned relics, those could be relics carried by monks as well, but Viper already has 2. The Muslim picks up the first one right now. There's a second one in front of his base, but it's going to be a race for that one in between the forests, a race that the Muslim is winning right now. It's going to come down to the relic in the middle. The spearmen are still there for Viper, and it looks like the Muslim was very close to picking that one up. Spearmen trying to chase down the monk over here, as you're going to have the cavalry swarm the infantry here. Viper knows that he needs to pick off that Prelate. Every single inch that this monk carries that relic closer to the walls of the Muslim is 1 nail in the coffin of Viper, because this way it very much seems like Viper is going to fall behind the relic numbers, and that is troublesome. In an HRE mirror, 3 relics versus 2 is a big advantage. We'll be talking about 300 gold per minute advantage in the favor of the Muslim. Not the end of the world for Viper. We have seen players losing with the relic advantage using HRE. Not just in this tournament. In fact, I don't even remember if we had a game like that. I'll have to recall my memories, but we have seen HRE players losing with the relic advantage. So it's not impossible for Viper by any means to turn this around, but this is a nice advantage for the Muslim to build upon, and from this point on, he's the one playing from an advantageous position. Mixes in a couple of knights over here, and he still has the mobility component as Viper is starting to wall up. Viper hasn't dropped off the second relic, which of course is hurting him as well. This is basically gold lost. 300 gold per minute is being lost on that monk not dropping off the relic. Now you're going to have the Prelate potentially being intercepted by the horsemen and the knights as well on the left side. The wars are going to be completed. The Prelate goes down to the cavalry, And once again, as long as the walls of Viper are open, or just simply non-existent, DeMusliM is gonna have his window to rampage his eco. Knights are being added by Viper, and once again, this Monk not dropping off the relic is hurting Viper so badly, because that is 300 gold per minute that he's losing. And if you think about it, that Monk has been standing there for at least a minute. That has been 300 gold down the drain for Viper. Looks like Viper will try to wall this one off, but those villagers are very unlucky. They will just bump into those cavalry units. There is a couple of scouts in that group as well for the DeMusliM, which means that this group of cavalry has a great vision. The horsemen and knights wouldn't have great vision over here, but the scouts are giving them that extra line of sight that they need to acquire targets like those villagers, and that's exactly what you're seeing over there. On the right side, Viper is trying to compensate for his relic deficit by trying to capture some sacred sites, and that relic still hasn't been dropped off. Looks like Viper isn't even looking over here. This is haunting him so much. I'm fairly certain he just misclicked that monastery, or maybe even he picked it up. It's possible he dropped it off and then accidentally clicked the Ragnitz Cathedral again. So the prelate picked it up. Finally, he drops off the relic, but that's a lot of gold that he lost this way. Looks like the DeMusliM once again commits with the cavalry. He has fallen into a trap the last time he did that in the previous game, but this could be a great opportunity, because it's all about stretching out the attention of the opponent, running left and right, making sure that your opponent is playing catch here. He has to catch up with those slow-moving spears, and you see, behind this one, the DeMusliM is already adding the anti-spear unit, the Landsknechte. He knows very well that Viper is mostly spearman, and this is exactly what he has to do. Run circles around Viper's base, knowing fully well that Viper has to pursue you until eternity, pretty much. You sometimes turn around, try to get some hits on the horsemen, because the horsemen and the knights can actually catch you, so you will need to fight them at some point, but you're just trying to avoid the spearmen as long as possible. Viper is walling off the right side, or at least that's the plan. Walls haven't been made just yet, but now you see the next wave coming in. Landsknechte, a very expensive unit, but it's very effective as well against the spearmen. And of course, you're also going to have some knights coming in here, so no man-at-arms for him. The sacred side on the right side should be decapped by one scout that's detached. Beautiful move. That scout has like 1 HP. That's the great move from the DeMusliM. He doesn't need an army to decap it. He needs one unit. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's just sending in one unit out there, decapping the sacred site. Some spears are sent over to try and prevent that, and Viper might be able to stop his opponent from decapping that. Same thing in the middle. You leave one scout behind, and you are just going to try and get your army going in the middle. Viper also called off some of his spearmen from this one. He's stationing them back at home. Meanwhile, looks like the sacred site in the middle is being decapped. Spearmen are moving to the right, however. So the right sacred site is still under the control of Viper here. The DeMusliM not really pushing into Viper's base, and this is giving Viper a window. A very important window for Viper to build his own Landsknechte up as well. And I feel like if the DeMusliM just went straight into the base of the opponent, ignoring the sacred sites, this would have been very threatening. Now, there is an attack going off in the base of the DeMusliM out there, so you gotta wonder what exactly is happening there. And there's a blue knight moving in. I didn't see a single villager being killed so far. There's a prelate healing as well. Not exactly sure why we're looking at Viper's base right now, but, well, so be it, I guess. In the middle, there is also a blue group of units just now hitting the DeMusliM's base. They come from straight from the middle area, and they're hitting the lumberjacks. For now, it's just going to be a prelate being intercepted, but this is something that the DeMusliM will have to address. He has to make some spears, but he's now moving towards the base of Viper, and I'm not exactly sure if Viper has spotted this army, so this could come as a nasty surprise. So many Landsknechte that could easily wipe out Viper's forces, especially if Viper doesn't have army back at home, because as you see, he's moving up towards the middle, trying to protect that wall. But this gives a window for the DeMusliM to potentially just push from the right side. He's going for that gold mine. It's quite unlucky for him that he's not finding any villagers over there, but he's still able to jump on the farming eco. That is a lot of villagers exposed here, and this is the moment where Viper is realizing, oh shoot, I'm under attack. He's gonna have to call off his forces. As you see, the Landsknechte will try to burn down that mining camp over there as fast as possible. Viper's counterattack with the spears might get 1 or 2 villager kills, but look at that, the prelate falls here from Viper, and his entire food eco is idle right now. That's a disaster for Viper. His food eco is idle right now, and look at that. What is the easiest thing to burn right now for the DeMusliM? It is farms. Farms that are expensive. Farms that are the heart and soul of Viper's food economy. The moment you see those spearmen, you will retreat. Although you do have the amount of Landsknechte you need to take this fight, and I do believe that the DeMusliM wants to take this fight over here. He needs to get his Landsknechte going, however, because the spears are currently fighting the knights. This is a heavy miss micro over here by the DeMusliM. The Landsknechte are just being very ineffective over here. Despite all of that, it is still a win for the DeMusliM, but look at the other side. The DeMusliM got completely distracted, and all of his villagers on the wood line were massacred. In the end, the villager count is still even, however, so you gotta wonder if the DeMusliM still has the lead. Had he not lost the villagers back at home, he would have a commanding lead right now. Now with the man-at-arms back, with 200 weapons and maces, he should be able to clean this one up without problems. And the thing is that Viper is still far from cleaning up those forces inside his base. He's losing his food eco. Viper currently has 0 food per minute. Despite the fact that Viper is doing a good job killing villagers over here, and DeMusliM is definitely struggling cleaning up those counterattacks, you get the feel that Viper not having any food eco and still having a lot of villagers exposed over here is going to have a substantial effect on this game. Ultimately, DeMusliM falls behind quite a bit in terms of villagers. He's down to 33 as opposed to 40 from the opponent. He needs to recuperate those losses to a certain extent, and he's going in for the lumberjacks. That he does. 3 villagers go down from Viper over here, and DeMusliM is now having a fiesta inside Viper's base. Viper has minimal forces to fight this one. The villagers on the farms trying to drop them, but you see, Viper isn't able to drop more farms. Despite the fact that he's got the wood right now, he's just too busy fighting over here, and he has no food eco. Replenishing those forces for Viper is gonna be insanely difficult, and that's the problem that he's facing. Now, if you're DeMusliM indeed, you're just disengaging, running left and right, trying to inflict as much damage as you can, wait for the reinforcements to arrive. DeMusliM could really benefit from some walls himself. This way, Viper would not have the opportunity to get damage done on the eco of DeMusliM, because right now the villager count is even. Of course, relic advantage is still on the side of DeMusliM here, but Viper's got one sacred side that never was decapped by DeMusliM. Still, had DeMusliM not lost so many villagers inside his eco, I think he would already have this game. The only reason why Viper is still in this game is because DeMusliM himself lost so much. Now, Viper has to rebuild that entire farming eco, whereas for DeMusliM, he's leveraging the fact that he's got map control. So he's just using that to gather the berries. You see on the right side, he was gathering the hunt in the Dale area, and up north, he's touching those berries right now with that mill. So it's all about using that map control. He's playing the food control game. He knows well that this is a mirror. They are making identical unit compositions, or at least something very similar. So if I'm able to control your access to food by burning down your farms, while I'm using my map control to have a continuous and reliable supply of food from the berries, I'm able to deliver quite a lot of punch to your base very soon with the superior numbers I have. Landsknecht counterattack coming in here by Viper. DeMusliM is going to intercept them in that narrow choke point with the man-at-arms, but the big things are happening inside Viper's base. 47 army right now for DeMusliM, 15 only for Viper. He has no tools to hold up this assault. The impact of all that idle villagers in the last 2 or 3 minutes is now being seen. Viper managed to clean this one up first, but he had no food eco, he had no resources to rebuild his army, and Viper has to tap out of this one. You can already see it on the cameras, but there is no surprise over here. That counterattack, the counterattack that burned down so many farms, killed so many villagers, but especially burning down the farms and idling so many food villagers of Viper, is what swung the game in the favor of DeMusliM, pushing him to match point 2-1. Let's add a score here to DeMusliM, and we are going to have Viper and DeMusliM both losing access to their Holy Roman Empire, and Hillandale, the home map of DeMusliM over here, is going to be a win for him. And now we are moving on to the home map of Viper once again. Remaining civilizations can be seen on the screen, so let's talk about that a tiny bit, because that's going to be an interesting topic to jump into. There is still Dry Arabia and Highview. Don't look at the names underneath the maps, because that's actually wrong. But the key thing I want you to see is that we have 2 open maps. We haven't seen a single really open map, like an open land map before, between these 2 players. And open land maps is usually a scenario where Viper shines, but today DeMusliM feels a little more confident, at least in early game. As the game gets a little more complex, multitasking is in the favor of Viper. That's something I'm seeing now for 2 games in a row. That once you have a lot of things happening at the same time, Viper is able to handle that situation a lot better. But DeMusliM, whenever he has to focus on just 1 or 2 things at the same time, his execution is stellar, and he's able to punish Viper for small things, like, for example, having those walls open on the right side and having the ability to burn down the farms. With that being said, either of those open maps could be reasonable for French, potentially. Abbasids are gone for Viper. If DeMusliM wants to be cheeky, this would be the time to pop Abbasids, I think. Because Abbasids would have a great matchup against French, although there is Mongols as well for Viper. Given the fact that this is match point for DeMusliM, I think Viper might need to pull the trigger on Mongols, and that could be a civilization that's going to be tough to fight for DeMusliM. So we'll have to see how that goes in game number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 4 in this best of 5 between the Viper and the Muslim. Match point for the Muslim over here as he's picking the Abbasid dynasty in the red color to the north. Down south is going to be Viper playing as the French in blue. Looks like the map is going to be Arabia, and this is a civilization matchup that I don't really envy Viper in, because we've talked about this one before this game. He had Mongols and French available. French is such an obvious civilization pick here for open maps, and in many ways, the Abbasid dynasty is a counter pick to that. That's part of the reason why I really felt like Viper should take Mongols here, because I had that feel that the Muslim could try to just counter pick a potential French with the Abbasids over here. This is a tough civilization matchup for Viper, because we have seen this more and more, that especially the Abbasid 2 town center, spearmen, and horsemen composition is very difficult for the French to fight. So I'm curious to see what exactly Viper has on his mind, but given the fact that the Muslims' base layout is also looking quite decent, berries at the back, gold mine quite safe as well, this is going to be extremely difficult for Viper. If he ever wants to recover in this set, it has to be now, and he has to play from a massive disadvantageous position because of the civilizations, I believe. Obviously, a lot of things can happen in this game, so by no means is Viper's situation disastrous, because especially if he can use those first couple of knights that he could potentially get from the French, get a couple of villager kills, control the stone mine of the opponent potentially, and prevent the 2 town center play, then Viper definitely has a good shot at this game. But this is not a matchup that the French like to be in. His base, he's got a gold mine at the back, which is great for the French. You want to make sure that that gold mine is safe. You need that gold mine for a knight's production. And you see that the Muslim actually went for the early mill, and this actually means that he needs to chop trees using the stragglers. Because if you go for a house of wisdom, the mill, and the mining camp, then it means that the Abbasid player has no more wood to work with. So you're going to have to use the straggler trees right next to your town center. Not the end of the world, but that's one of the first decision points that you see when it comes to an Abbasid build. Are you using the berries? And then in that case, you will have to delay your House of Wisdom potentially. Or are you using the sheep? Because with the Abbasids, oftentimes you just end up using the sheep at the beginning, as long as you don't have enough wood for a mill as well. So you use sheep, you build the mining camp, the House of Wisdom, and a lumber camp alongside the house, and once you have enough wood for the mill, you can place it on the berries. So there are some different approaches available here for the players. It looks like the Muslim is going to scout Viper's gold miners over there. Viper's got 4 on gold, which means that he's going to have quite a lot of gold collected by the time he gets to feudal. Has 9 sheep underneath the town center as well. That's a nice amount of sheep that he managed to collect. And there's a mill being placed. This is a classic professional scout build here from the Viper. I would be very surprised if this was something else. With 9 sheep under your town center, you don't really make a mill on your berries. On the other side, however, there is going to be a second town center on the horizon for the Muslim. And I think that the French fast castle build here, or semi-fast castle with professional scouts, has a potential window against the Abbasids. Viper harassing those gold miners a tiny bit with his scout over here. Minimal damage will be caused. The Muslim just needs a tiny bit of gold so that he can get the fresh foodstuffs upgrade from the economy wing that he's currently building. After that, he's going to play with the stone. Viper sees those stone miners, so he knows very well that the Muslim is mining stone over here. He's using 1 scout on each of those mines to harass the villagers, and I don't see the Muslim scout coming back to help. There is a wheelbarrow upgrade first for Viper. I wonder if professional scouts is still going to be part of the equation. He could finish wheelbarrow and then go for pro scout still, so that could be an option for him. But what I wanted to say is that against the 2 town center Abbasid play, a French fast castle with professional scouts actually works out quite nicely. You have about a minute and a half window, I would say, at maximum, however. Because if this 2 town center play from the Abbasids is executed well, you can work out a nice castle age timing as well, especially now that in the current patch that we're playing, the age up time is only 105 seconds instead of 120. Viper dropping a range over here, so he's going to put up a lot more pressure than I initially anticipated. It is going to be knights and archers, and the Muslim is going to start walling himself up. Now, he's not going to be able to fully wall himself, I believe, because down south it's a narrow gap. On the left, it's a narrow gap to the edge of the map. But you gotta wonder how he's going to wall off the right side. I don't think that he will be able to. But even just partial walls can help a lot against the French, because you limit the movement of the opponent. That's the idea over here. First knights are now coming through the map here for Viper. Fresh foodstuffs upgrade just now coming in. And arrow slits for that defensive tower over there. So the Muslim is playing this one very defensively. First knight coming out. I get the feel that if he wanted to play this one defensively, he could have gone for barracks instead, however. Because that barracks would have helped against those scouts with the spears, and it would have helped against the initial knights. The archers take a lot of time to appear on the battlefield because they have to walk across the map, so having a barracks out here will give you a quite decent window to build up your defenses like those walls, just by having 2 or 3 spearmen helping out here. Now, DeMusliM, by dropping the arrow slits and by, of course, committing a lot of villagers to making those walls, he will delay his second town center, and this gives a window for Viper to build up his eco himself, potentially go for a rather fast castle age here. And I do see some units moving up to the left side. First archer hitting the field right now, as the knight is moving in for the stone miners. No villager is lost in the battle, as a stable will be dropped now by DeMusliM. I'm still a little puzzled about his approach over here, and I don't think that this is the most optimal approach. But we'll see what he has on his mind. Maybe he has something masterminded behind this one. Both players with wheelbarrow already. As you see, the scout was able to get some hits on that archer. Not a lot of damage, but every single bit matters, as you're going to have apparently horsemen coming out here for DeMusliM. Now, he doesn't have a barracks right now to deal with the knights. He's got the stone for the town center, but not the wood at this point. He's cut off from gold, but he doesn't need that at this point either. But that's going to delay his castle age time. And as I said, if everything goes well, you can get a pretty nice castle age timing with a 2 town center Abbasid build nowadays. With the berries and the gold mining, you can get like, what, 40-ish villagers castle age, which is pretty decent for a 2 town center build. But because that gold mine is cut off right now, that's going to delay the castle age timing of DeMusliM, giving Viper a window to get to castle and potentially play something like men-at-arms. We'll have to see if that's the plan over here. Up north, a new knight is moving in from Viper, ready for some harassment. Second town center being dropped by DeMusliM, very close to the first one. But it's not going to protect the berries, nor does it protect the gold mines. So currently, DeMusliM has no access to gold, no access to the berries, and that's exactly what Viper wants to accomplish. And the second stable is being dropped right now by DeMusliM. Not a single spearman. That's so curious. And you see, Viper is building up his resource bank right now, even dropping a tower over here. He's mining stone with 2, so it's not going to be a second town center. It will just be arrow slits, a tower that his opponent has no idea about. DeMusliM doesn't see that tower. It will come as a nasty surprise for him that there's a tower behind his wood line, because he's going to have to abandon that. And that's where he built his second town center, so he was counting on that wood line for a long time. Meanwhile, it looks like the horseman will scare away any forces from Viper on the north, but you get the feel that DeMusliM is having a bit of a trouble over here, because this 2 town center build isn't really working out as he imagined. He right now has no villagers advantage. He's going to clean up those archers on the north, but the knights are still around. Potential window for Viper to get a 1 or 2 more villager kills on those exposed resources. As you see, there is a group of units coming in from the left side. They're about to hit the gold mine out there. Spectator, please. Spectator, gold miners getting slaughtered by the knights over here. Looks like we're looking at the archer getting killed instead. There goes the first villager. Second villager goes down as well, as you are going to have the third villager getting it back to the town center. There is going to be a defensive tower that was halted, however. Once again, the castle age progress will be slowed down here for DeMusliM. He's still far away from castle, so it's not really a big deal at this point, but Viper just needs to play the delay game. He needs to keep up the pressure, drop a tower behind the other wood line as well, and I'm just puzzled why DeMusliM is just playing with full horsemen. The horsemen will be able to repel the knights given sufficient numbers, but it's going to take so many horsemen to deal with just 1 or 2 knights over here. And honestly, if Viper just adds a barracks himself, once again, he's a step ahead. There is the arrow slits upgrade coming in on the first tower, second tower being dropped right now, and there is really no backup forest to go to for DeMusliM. Still, once again, knights taking on those horsemen. I really feel like I'm just repeating myself compared to the second and the first game. DeMusliM feels so stubborn going for a certain unit composition. In the previous game, one of the things that actually made his game a lot better compared to game number 1 and 2 is that he actually responded to Viper's unit composition with the counter units. You could see him adding the Landsknecht upon seeing the Spearmen. You could see him adding the Men-at-Arms and getting the upgrades against the Knights. And that actually helped him a lot. And right now, you are seeing him just going so heavily on the horsemen and struggling so much to deal with all those knights out there. And just a couple of spearmen would have helped so much. There is basically no archers to fight against. Now, he's now adding some barracks, but I feel like the problem that he's facing is that he gained basically no advantage over Viper. In fact, he just fall behind. Look at that. 39 villagers against 39. For an Abbasid 2 town center player, that's an absolute disaster. Obviously, against the French, it's a little more difficult to carve out that villager lead because the French have a faster working town center throughout this entire game. As, oh, looks like the tower might have been scouted over here by DeMusliM. There's a sneaky tower coming in for Viper hidden in that stealth forest. But once again, DeMusliM doesn't have the forces to fight that. DeMusliM getting close to Castle Age himself, but Viper is already on the way up using the guild hall to do so. And it looks like the horsemen are right now being hidden, but I don't think that DeMusliM is aware of that tower. Spearmen are now coming in, and now this is an opportunity to kill the villager over here. The villager does get taken down. Oh no, it doesn't. The villager survives, and now the knights will garrison into the tower as well. The tower has to focus down the spears over here, but finally DeMusliM is arriving with increasing spearman numbers. He will be able to surround this tower, and that's exactly what he has to do. Surround it with spears, try to take down as many of the knights as possible inside over here. Indeed, this is going to be all the knights getting surrounded. Beautiful fight over here for DeMusliM, slaying all those knights. Look at that. That's a beautiful surround on what was 3 knights over here. The villager does not get away either. Will be taken down by 1 horseman. That was a great engagement for DeMusliM. The problem is that he is still far away from recovery, because we're looking at an even villager count and Viper on the way to Castle Age, and you see the switch into men-at-arms. It is expected from the French at this point to switch into men-at-arms if the opponent is going so heavy on the spearmen. Of course, you still needed 1 or 2 spears because you need to swing the battle in your favor. Now it's so heavy of a commitment here for DeMusliM with the spears. If he plays this one safely, he falls back. Now that Viper is up to Castle Age, DeMusliM should know that the counter unit to his spearmen is approaching. That could be archers, but it's more likely that it's men-at-arms. But at latest, when he sees the barracks, he should call off his spearmen. The horseman can stay, and that's exactly what he's doing. He can get some raiding damage done, and this is a great window for DeMusliM to at least get 1 or 2 villager kills. Looks like Viper is getting away with most of the villagers here, so no villager getting taken down. But DeMusliM needs to buy himself time. Buy himself time to get to castle. And this is what we talked about before. The French have about a 1.5 minute window if they play a semi-fast castle-ish build against a 2 town center castle age build. They need about, or they have about 1.5 minutes of a window to push the Abbasid player before the Abbasid player gets to castle and gets the crossbowman out. And that's the way that the Abbasids have to play this one. Seeing the men-at-arms, your appropriate reaction is to keep raiding with the horsemen, force the opponent to defend, make some walls, make some towers, but most importantly, get to castle. Because if you get to castle, you can respond to the men-at-arms immediately with the crossbows. And the men-at-arms take so much time to get to your base that you really have that window. Castle age up just now started, I do believe, for DeMusliM. Probably with the Courtier wing. He's getting textiles for his villagers as well, so he's bracing for an attack over here. He's trying to intercept some reinforcements, and he was successful picking off 1 or 2 men-at-arms, but the first couple of men-at-arms are just now approaching to his base. Spearmen will swarm that group of men-at-arms. Look at that. That many spears will take down 2 men-at-arms, no problem. A ram was built here by DeMusliM as he's getting the phalanx upgrade, so he's going very heavy on the spearman department. Spearman crossbowman will be difficult for Viper to deal with, as Viper was adding that second town center, as you could see for a brief moment. So he wants to not only catch up in the villager department, he's now behind by 7, he also wants to potentially pull ahead with the French here. But now Viper is in a troublesome spot, because his men-at-arms accomplished nothing, and suddenly DeMusliM is on the way to Castle Age. That's still a scary force of spearmen and horsemen, especially if you consider the fact that Viper's army is quite small. We're talking about 8 units on the battlefield for Viper. And that is not a lot to work with. In fact, it's quite little. Viper now grabbing a market for himself. He's got a ton of gold to work with. Little food, little wood, however, to operate with. He's just now adding his farming eco. He had to call off his villagers from the hunt, and because of that, he didn't have access to the food for some time. Looks like some spearmen will actually burn down the ram over here for DeMusliM. Little wasteful. He tried to take this tower down, expecting it to be undefended, but it wasn't undefended. Knight is gonna get taken down here, killing 1 villager on the berries. And up north, you do see apparently a very poor scout over here, getting absolutely massacred by the horsemen. So the tower still stays up here on the right-hand side wood line for DeMusliM. 5 villagers advantage right now for him. As the man-at-arms and the spearmen get close to his base, he's almost up to castle, however, and that's his window to start adding crossbowmen against the men-at-arms. This is going to be tricky now for Viper, because his window, at least for this part of the game, has closed. This is the usual window that you have for a French player with a semi-fast castle against an Abbasid Dynasty player. And that window has closed, so this game could very well go very long, because now both players will probably settle in for a longer game. DeMusliM isn't able to control a significant portion of the map, however, which means that he doesn't have a ton of access to those external berries. There's a berry patch all the way up north that he could still take, And on the right side, looks like we're seeing men-at-arms and lancers added here for the Muslims. So no crossbowmen for him. He still has a huge army, however. He can afford to stay back home with the spears, add some knights and men-at-arms to fight this one, and also flank around with those horsemen. That's a big thing here. Viper doesn't have tremendous numbers. So suddenly, the Muslim's numbers advantage will provide him one extra thing over Viper. The ability to be at two places. Because as you see, the Muslim is fighting on the left side over here, but he has his group of horsemen still alive on the right side. DC number 3 is being dropped, so he's building up for an even larger economy with 3 town centers. He's got a 4 villagers lead right now, but his horsemen are getting close to Viper's base over here. You can see the red dots on the minimap converging upon that blue player base. Viper is going to have to respond to that, but guess what? Now you have a new army that you have to deal with. And this is the advantage that the Muslim has right now. 33 army against 7, he can afford to split his army into 2, especially one of those groups being just horsemen that can disengage from any combat they do not wish to take. For now, Viper has dropped the monastery, which means that he is going to have a decent amount of relics potentially being brought in. He wants to get some relics going before his map control is going to collapse, but I think it's already too late for that. He has no map control. He's building up an army right now. He's up to 15, but his opponent's at 44, and the Muslim is getting ready to push. Keep in mind, he can make siege weapons on the battlefield, and this is something that he's going to utilize quite heavily. This is match point for the Muslim. Now, if Viper loses this game, it's not the end of the world, because he's not going to be out. This is the Swiss stage. He will just fall lower on the bracket. But this would be a huge win for the Muslim if he could take down the Viper. Up north, Viper is going to probe those barriers, which is a smart thing to do. He wants to see if there is enemy villagers, and I love the move from the Muslim to have the defensive towers over there. So those spearmen will be able to accomplish nothing. In fact, you have spring golden placements on this tower. Some people could call it overcautious, and in many cases I would agree with that. But in this scenario, I think it's a great move to have it over there. Viper is just now scrambling for a siege workshop, but it's going to be up front as well, so the moment the siege weapon pops out, it could be sniped. And here comes the deadly push of the Abbasids over here. Mangonel setting up. Viper's going to send his knights to try and deal with those. Spearmen will try to catch up. And as you see, the ram, the horsemen, they're already burning down that siege workshop. They know very well that the Mangonels will die to the Springolds. So it's all about killing that Springgold factory out there. The knights are actually looping around for Viper. In fact, they went for a counterattack. They're hitting the eco of the Muslim. You can see those blue dots in the minimap with the attack notification going off on the left side of the Muslim's base. Not something that the Muslim addressed, but he's got other things to focus on, and it is going to be this fight over here. Once the men-at-arms get closer, or the Mangonels get closer rather, to this position, they can start pushing those lumberjacks, and the town center is also under attack over here. Mangonel is now setting up. This is not a fight that Viper can take. He's got 21 army as opposed to 59 for the Muslim. Team Liquid, the Muslim, the first set that he plays as a member of Team Liquid against one of the greatest players in Age of Empires history, the Viper. He's at a 2-1 score, and he's pushing Viper's base right now. 2 more rams are being added. The spearmen brace for impact, but it's only 17 army against 58. How much can you do with so low numbers? The town center is gone, and now the Muslim can start rampaging the left side of the eco. He doesn't have to push that castle. In fact, he shouldn't push that castle. He should just start burning down the rest of Viper's base, take down the production buildings. Taking down the market would mean that Viper would struggle to balance his eco, and if you look at Viper's gold income per minute, non-existent. Viper has no gold income, and that is the biggest problem right now for him. Mangonels are ready to set up over here. Viper is pulling the villagers as a last desperate effort to deal with the rams. Jumps back into the keep when the Mangonels fire, but this is so much as he can do. There's a town center also helping out against the rams. One ram gets taken down. Spearmen still working valiantly to try and take down the others over here. Looks like the second ram goes down as well. The Mangonels fire fully into villagers though. And with new rams being built right underneath the castle, you gotta wonder how long that castle can hold for Viper. Mangonel is also shelling it left and right. Viper's last hold over here, but can he hold this one? I don't think it's going to be the case. Viper gets taken now. You can see on the cams, the Muslim, one of the biggest victories here in his competitive Age of Empires career. Winning against Viper in the first round of N4C. What a game, what a set. I said before this game that I do believe that Viper is going to have a tough time with the Civilization matchup over here. And I do believe that the Muslim has played this matchup as well as it was possible to be played. There were some rough moments for him in this set. But all in all, you could see why he is the champion of SteelSeries Prime Cup. You could see why this player is considered one of the best in the game. You could see why DeMusliM was invited for N4C, because he delivered a rather consistent and strong gameplay. There were some wacky moments, as I said, especially game number 2, the Mongolian Heights game. That was a little off, I would say, for him. But the rest of them, he played an amazing set over here. Viper had some great games as well. Viper has been grinding for N4C, so Viper by no means is a pushover, despite the fact that Viper has been spending the last 2 months mostly with Age of Empires 2. He only started grinding for N4C like 2 or 3 weeks ago at maximum. But DeMusliM takes down Viper over here. Once again, Viper is not completely eliminated from the tournament. He is still going to play tomorrow as well. But a big win for DeMusliM. He's able to take the opening set here. And with that, DeMusliM will go into day number 2 being one of the happiest players of the entire player lineup, I believe. Because if you would have to think about who's potentially the most intimidating player, many would probably say Viper. And DeMusliM managed to take him down. He's got 1-1, taking this set over here in a 3-1 fashion. And with that, I'm also going to sign off from this broadcast. Thank you so much for joining up with me for the entire day. As you could see, by the time you see this video, all other free sets casted today will be released as well, and I will return tomorrow with all 4 sets of N4C as well, broadcasted there as well. Same scenario with a clean feed. I will probably get some tools to be able to mark on the screen, because that's definitely something that we need, especially given the fact that I'm not the one controlling the camera. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any feedback to this format, please let me know, because as I said, this is the first time I'm doing this way, sort of cutting off the breaks, and also just in general using this external observer that I have no influence on, and the clean feed and whatnot. The overlay is definitely helping, but if you have any kind of feedback, do let me know. I will try to listen to your words as best as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, because N4C is far from being done.